This is the very first red flag report. The story starts as so many disasters do in the modern world with a swipe right. Sarah, a marketing executive in her late 20s from Chicago, was tired of the shallow, endless parade of profiles. She was searching for depth, for substance, and then she found Mark. His profile was flawless. A sharp photo in a tailored suit, another hiking in the Rockies, and a bio that read, less like an advertisement and more like an intellectual proposal. He was a tech entrepreneur, traveled extensively, and his text initially was perfect. He didn't use emojis. He used complete sentences. He built her up, listened intently to her work challenges, and seemed to anticipate her needs before she voiced them. In short, Mark was a carefully constructed solution to Sarah's dating fatigue. The messages were relentless, but never overwhelming. They were precise. He would send a link to an obscure article she had mentioned and follow up with a thoughtful paragraph, analyzing her take on it. He learned her favorite coffee order without ever having met her. He called her beautiful, but also intelligent and ambitious. Mark wasn't just charming. He was conducting reconnaissance. Within a week, Sarah was hooked. She felt seen, validated, and utterly safe. He spoke of the future, not just a future, but their future. It was exhilarating, moving faster than any relationship she'd ever known. Yet it felt right. He was giving her exactly what she needed, and she was so busy accepting the gift, she failed to look at the delivery truck. This, viewers, is the first and most critical red flag in our analysis: love bombing. It's the calculated use of excessive attention and affection to quickly gain control over your emotional landscape. The first glitch in Mark's perfect code appeared on a Tuesday. They were planning their first face-to-face date. Mark suggested an exclusive old-school Italian place downtown, the kind of place where reservations were legendary. When Sarah checked the menu online, she noticed the prices were astronomical. She suggested a slightly more casual hip bar she liked. Mark agreed quickly, but then sent a strange follow-up text. A photo of a high-end watch on a mahogany table with the message, "Just finished a difficult client call. I hope I can still enjoy our date with this kind of pressure, but I'll be there, of course. Anything for you." It was a guilt trip disguised as an intimate confession. He was implicitly dismissing her choice of venue and manufacturing stress to elicit her sympathy and gratitude. Sarah apologized, reaffirmed the time, and instantly felt guilty for suggesting the bar. The night of the date arrived. Sarah chose a sleek red dress. She walked into the upscale downtown bar feeling confident and excited, looking for the Mark in the tailored suit from the photos. But the man who rose from the dark leather booth was a close approximation. He was Mark, but heavier, noticeably older, and wearing a faded polo shirt that was decidedly not tailored. He wore his glasses low on his nose, giving him an air of perpetual annoyance. The photos were clearly doctored, but Sarah swallowed her disappointment. "It's fine," she told herself. "It's about the connection, right?" But then he didn't apologize for the discrepancy. He didn't acknowledge the effort she made. Instead, he simply looked her up and down, frowned faintly, and said, in a voice that was both demanding and dry, "You're late. Order me a martini." Sarah's initial shock quickly morphed into a chilling realization. Not only was Mark physically different from his polished profile pictures, a man in his mid-40s rather than the sleek 30-something she'd anticipated, but his entire demeanor was off. The warm, witty conversationalist from their texts was gone. In his place sat a man who barely made eye contact, fiddling with his phone under the table even as she tried to initiate conversation. When she asked about his difficult client call from earlier, hoping to find a common thread, he dismissed it with a wave of his hand. "Oh, that old thing? Just a minor annoyance. Nothing you'd understand." He chuckled, a dry, humorless sound, and then immediately pivoted to criticizing the bar's music choice, effectively shutting down any attempt to connect on the very subjects he'd mastered online. This was the second layer of the deception. Not just a physical fabrication, but a complete personality transplant. As the date progressed, Mark's stories became increasingly bizarre. He claimed to own a yacht he rarely used because the upkeep was such a bother. He casually mentioned a penthouse apartment with panoramic city views, then contradicted himself by saying he was between places due to a recent renovation. His tech entrepreneur status, which had been so detailed in their messages, now became vague and evasive. When Sarah mentioned a prominent tech company in the city, hoping to find common ground, Mark scoffed. "Oh, them? They're dinosaurs. I'm working on something much bigger, much more disruptive. You wouldn't have heard of it." It wasn't just inconsistency, it was a deliberate obfuscation, a refusal to be pinned down. He was weaving a tapestry of grandiosity and secrecy, subtly testing how much she would accept. This, friends, is a classic pattern of pathological lying, often a hallmark of individuals building a false reality to impress or control. Sarah, usually composed, felt a knot tightening in her stomach. Every word Mark spoke seemed designed to keep her off balance, to make her question her own perceptions. He never asked her about her work, her passions, or her life outside of what he'd already gleaned from her profile. Instead, he would sporadically pepper her with intrusive, oddly specific questions. "What kind of car do you drive? Do you live alone? What time do you usually get home from work?" These weren't conversational icebreakers. They felt like data points being collected. When she tried to ask him about a trip he'd mentioned taking to Thailand, he grew visibly agitated, his voice dropping to a low, warning tone. "That's personal, Sarah. Let's stick to the present, shall we?" The charming facade from the app had completely disintegrated, replaced by an unsettling intensity that left Sarah feeling exposed and vulnerable. As the first round of drinks dwindled, Mark didn't suggest another. Instead, he leaned back, crossed his arms, and declared, "You know, Sarah, you're not quite what I expected. Your online presence, it was very engaging, but in person you're a little quiet." It was a calculated dismissal, designed to undermine her confidence and shift blame for the disastrous date onto her. He hadn't bothered to engage her, to draw her out, and now he was faulting her for his own failure to connect. He then casually checked his expensive-looking watch, a detail Sarah now viewed with extreme skepticism, adding, "I have an early start tomorrow. I suppose we should get going." There was no we, no shared experience, no attempt to salvage the evening. Just a cold, decisive end to an encounter that had been a masterclass in deception and emotional manipulation. Sarah rose from the table, a polite but firm smile masking her inner turmoil. "It was interesting, Mark. I should get going." She fully expected him to simply nod and disappear into the night. Instead, he stood, blocking her path slightly. "Leaving so soon? I thought we were just getting started." His tone was smooth, but his eyes held a steely possessiveness that sent a shiver down her spine. He then placed a hand on her arm, a gesture that felt less like intimacy and more like an assertion of control. "My car is just outside. Let me walk you." Sarah pulled her arm back, her politeness rapidly evaporating. "No, thank you. I'm fine on my own." The air in the bar suddenly felt thick with unspoken threats. This wasn't a gentlemanly offer. It was a test of boundaries, a bid for continued control. As they walked towards the exit, Sarah's phone vibrated. It was a text from her best friend. "Are you okay? Just saw your date's dating profile. You won't believe what I found." Sarah quickly swiped it closed, but the words ignited a cold certainty. She subtly activated her phone's audio recorder, a small precaution she'd learned from true crime podcasts. Then a detail from earlier clicked into place. Mark had casually mentioned working from home, which is a blessing with my 3 kids. 3 kids. She distinctly remembered his profile stating no kids, but open to the idea. And the photo he'd shown her earlier of his home office had a distinct, brightly colored child's drawing taped to a visible shelf. "Mark," she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "You mentioned having kids earlier. Your profile says you don't." His smile vanished. The charming mask Mark had worn, even the thinly veiled one from earlier, completely shattered. His eyes narrowed to slits and his voice dropped to a venomous whisper. "Who are you to question my profile? It's none of your business. You think you know me from a few messages?" He then launched into a tirade, accusing Sarah of being obsessed, stalker-like, and delusional. He twisted every interaction, every detail, attempting to portray her as the problem. "Maybe you're just not attractive enough for someone like me and you're trying to find excuses," he sneered, his voice laced with pure malice. This, viewers, is the terrifying shift into narcissistic rage or gaslighting. When the manipulator feels exposed, they will lash out, deny reality, and try to make you doubt your sanity. "I'm leaving," Sarah stated, her voice trembling slightly but firm. She turned sharply, quickening her pace towards the bar's entrance. Mark, however, wasn't done. He followed her out onto the street, his voice growing louder, drawing the attention of passers-by. "You're pathetic. You'll never find anyone. You're lucky I even gave you the time of day." His words were a desperate attempt to regain control, to inflict damage. But Sarah kept walking, dialing an Uber, her heart pounding. As the car pulled up, she glanced back. Mark was standing on the curb, glaring, his figure illuminated by a distant streetlight, the image burned into her memory. He had shown her his true colors, a final, undeniable red flag waving violently in the dark. Sarah's encounter with Mark was more than just a bad date. It was a textbook case of deceptive relationship building, and a clear demonstration of several severe red flags. Let's break down the psychological patterns Mark employed and how they manifest in real-world dating scenarios. His initial love bombing wasn't genuine affection. It was a strategic tactic to overwhelm Sarah's defenses, create an intense emotional bond quickly, and establish a sense of dependency. By showering her with excessive attention and tailored compliments, he bypasses the natural progression of trust, making it difficult for the target to recognize red flags because they're already emotionally invested. This emotional manipulation is a powerful tool to hook victims before their rational mind can catch up. Next, Mark's pathological lying about his career, his living situation, and especially his children, serves multiple functions. Firstly, it builds a grandiose false persona designed to impress and attract, masking deep insecurities. Secondly, the inconsistencies and contradictions he exhibited are classic signs of a covert narcissist or a severe insecure attachment style, where a person cannot tolerate vulnerability. They construct an elaborate fantasy life to gain admiration. When pressed, as Sarah did, these individuals often resort to deflection and gaslighting, making you feel crazy for noticing their lies. Mark's immediate anger and victim blaming, "Who are you to question?" perfectly illustrate this, turning the spotlight back onto Sarah's perceived flaws rather than owning his deception. This is a critical red flag. They will twist reality to maintain their fabricated image. Mark's aggressive follow-up after Sarah tried to leave, including physically blocking her path and making disparaging remarks, highlights two extremely dangerous red flags: boundary violations and escalating emotional abuse. A healthy partner respects your space and choices, especially on a first date. His persistence and subsequent verbal assault were attempts to assert dominance and control, to punish Sarah for rejecting him and exposing his deceit. This kind of behavior is not just rude, it's a precursor to more severe forms of coercive control and potential stalking. Had Sarah not been firm and had immediate recourse for escape, the situation could have escalated further. Always trust your gut when someone attempts to violate your physical or emotional boundaries. So what can we learn from Sarah's harrowing experience? Verify, don't just trust. Be cautious of profiles that seem too perfect. A simple video call before a first date can reveal physical discrepancies. Pace yourself. Love bombing is a red flag. Healthy relationships build trust over time, not overnight. Trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. Don't rationalize away inconsistencies or uncomfortable feelings. Listen to their actions, not just their words. A person's behavior on a date, especially under pressure, reveals far more than their meticulously crafted online persona. Have an exit strategy. Always share your date plans with a friend, and have a way to leave if you feel unsafe or uncomfortable. Sarah's story is a stark reminder that in the world of online dating, vigilance is your strongest defense. Stay safe, stay smart, and always remember, your intuition is often the first and most reliable red flag report you'll ever get.